Okay, so you've probably heard some noise, maybe seen headlines about Do.O.G.E checks, this idea of direct payments to Americans.
Right. Payments supposedly funded by savings from this new Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE.
Exactly. But let's be really clear up front. This is just a proposal right now. It's not, an active program.
Definitely not. It's an idea being kicked around.
So in this deep dive, we're looking at the analysis, trying to figure out, well, is this even possible? Who might actually get a check? And what's the timeline, if any?
Yeah, we're aiming to cut through some of the speculation surrounding it.
Good. So let's start with eligibility. Who would even be considered for one of these checks?
The key phrase they're using is net federal income taxpayer.
Okay, what does that actually mean in plain English?
Basically, it means the federal income tax you owe is more than any refundable tax credits you might receive. So you're paying into the system, net net.
Ah, okay. That sounds specific.
It is, and it means a pretty large chunk of the population wouldn't qualify. We're talking maybe 40% of U.S. households, often folks with lower incomes.
40%. Wow. That's very different from, say, the COVID stimulus checks, right?
Yeah.
Those are much broader.
Completely different. Those were mostly based on income thresholds, reaching a lot more people. The argument from proponents here is, well, maybe this incentivizes work, or perhaps it's less inflationary because net taxpayers might save more of it.
Interesting reasoning. Okay, so if you were potentially eligible, when could this actually happen? Is there any kind of timeline?
No, not really. There's no official timeline at all.
None.
No. Several big things need to happen first. DOGE itself needs to, finish its work finding these savings, and that's not scheduled until July 2026.
Right, 2026.
And those savings, whatever they claim, need to be verified somehow. That's a whole other step.
And probably the biggest step.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Congress would need to explicitly say, yes, we authorize this, and then actually set aside money, appropriate the funds.
And has that process even started? We're in early 2025 now.
Nope. No legislation has even been introduced. So, yeah, the key takeaway is probably don't make any financial plans based on getting a DOGE check anytime soon.
Got it. Okay, let's talk about the amount. There was a lot of initial buzz around, what, $5,000 per household?
Yeah, that was the figure thrown out early on. It was based on this projection of DOGE finding a massive $2 trillion in savings and then distributing 20% of that to these net taxpayers.
$2 trillion. That sounds like a lot.
It's huge. And even Elon Musk, who's involved with DOGE, has sort of walked that back a bit, suggesting maybe $1 trillion is more realistic.
Okay, so maybe half. But what have they actually reported finding so far?
Well, as of April 2025, the reported savings are sitting around $160 billion.
$160 billion versus a $1 or $2 trillion target. That's quite a gap.
It is. It's way off the pace needed to hit those big numbers by 2026.
So what would $160 billion in savings actually mean for checks? Can we, calculate that?
We can do some rough math. If you took that $160 billion and just split it equally among all taxpayers, not just the net ones, it'd be under $1,000 each, maybe around 993 or so.
Okay.
Now, if you stick to the original idea, 20% distribution only to net taxpayers using that $160 billion, it gets much smaller, about $199 per person.
Wow, $199. That's a long way from $5,000.
A very long way. Even looking at some revised, more cautious scenarios, like maybe $500 billion in savings with 20% distributed, that still only gets you to maybe $1,250 per eligible household. Some advisors are now suggesting a range closer to $1,200 to $2,500 per eligible family.
So the reality seems to be significantly less than the initial promise, even if the savings appear.
Definitely. The expectations have shifted quite a bit.
And that brings us back to the savings themselves. That $2 trillion target. How realistic is it?
Well, like I said, many economists are pretty skeptical you can find that much just through efficiency. And verifying even the $160 billion claim so far is tricky. There's support for having the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, verify it, but that hasn't happened yet.
Have past efforts like this worked? Hunting for waste, fraud, and abuse.
Historically, the results have been much, much smaller. Nothing on this scale. Plus, you have some contradictory data floating around, reports suggesting federal spending was actually higher in 2025 than 2024.
Higher? That doesn't sound like saving money.
Exactly. It challenges the whole narrative. And you have to remember, a huge chunk of federal spending is mandatory stuff. Social Security, Medicare. You can't easily cut those with, efficiency tweaks.
So it sounds like even if some savings are found, getting checks out the door faces some major roadblocks.
Oh, absolutely. Congressional approval is the biggest one, without a doubt.
What would that look like in Congress? Just a simple vote.
Probably not simple at all. You'd likely see huge debates. How should any savings be used? Should it go to checks or maybe deficit reduction? Who exactly should be eligible for checks? All the fiscal concerns, the political dynamics, it would be complex.
So the expert consensus is pretty skeptical then.
Largely, yes. Skepticism about hitting the savings targets and skepticism about checks happening unless Congress explicitly acts. And a quick warning, be really wary of any scams popping up claiming to help you get your D.O.G.E stimulus check. They aren't real.
Good warning. Okay, so to wrap this up, the whole D.O.G.E check idea has a lot of question marks. The timeline is uncertain. Eligibility is much narrower than past programs. And there are really big hurdles in both finding the savings and getting Congress to actually approve sending out checks.
Right. Which leads to maybe final thought for you, the listener. Given all these complexities, all the uncertainties, what does this whole proposal, this whole discussion, tell us about what people hope for or expect when it comes to government efficiency and maybe getting some direct financial benefit back?
Something to think about.
Yeah.
Certainly encourages a critical look at these kinds of proposals as they come up.